have to say, Jim going to Home Depot is just as funny. I get a
As me
kick out
going
of
to
it
Home
as you
Depot.
going to Home Depot. I don't put you as a Home Depot type of guy.
Well, Kim and
And I don't mean that in a bad way, Jim.
we have restored that. Like our current house, we did a big project when we bought it. Right, we like the whole first floor, one whole side. We was down to studs, and we put in a new kitchen and built out a bunch of
I
stuff.
remember that.
But we have restored 1, 2, 3, 4 houses where we've done the majority of the work.
Really? I would have
Yeah.
never
My father
seen...
was a plumber. I grew up as a typical Italian kid whose dad's a plumber. You're an indentured servant, right? And I've changed thousands of water heaters and furnaces
I
and all
never
that
knew
kind of
that.
Well, he's
stuff.
in real estate too, so you kind of have to know
Well,
that
are
stuff.
we alive now? Are we on?
But I'm more.
I keep it rolling now. Just
keep
I'm
it
like
rolling?
I'm more finance and risk than I am. I don't like
Oh.
manage and buy buildings.
No, that's what we want to talk about. But let me tell everybody,
love
since
that's up my
we're
alley.
rolling, we have Jim Valente on today. Thanks, Jim, for coming. I looked at your chart. I've known you since 2014.
yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
You were way
And
over
we don't even
in
spend the holidays together.
Verona.
You were in Verona,
Verona.
where you had to go in the back of that
Right.
little.
But did you go to the doctor's office down the road too? Were you there?
I did go there.
You were there for a little bit,
Yes.
right? That's crazy.
Many moons ago.
2014. But tell everybody how much weight you've lost on Ideal Protein.
Oh my gosh. So when I came here, so
we on
that's what,
Snapchat?
8 years ago now?
8 years ago, yeah.
So I was, let's call it rounded at 290 pounds.
wow.
Yeah, I don't even remember Jim at that
And
weight.
then
He showed me a picture and I couldn't believe it. It
Yeah,
doesn't
my-
even look like you.
and I went down, the lowest I got there was 218
Yes.
in one straight stretch, which was probably about 5 months, 5.5 months, something
I'd
like
have to
that.
look. Yeah, possibly.
And it was interesting because the whole thing started. I had put on a lot of weight since college, a lot. I put all that on because I was around 210, 218 in
A
college.
lot of
And
beer.
yeah, but I'm just big, right? Right now
You're tall.
I'm at 227, and my bones structure is big, right? I could
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Like most scales, if someone just takes and says, okay, you're 6 feet, you're 227 pounds, you're obese,
Right.
right? But it's not. If you look at me and if you show a picture to somebody, it's
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's just everybody has different body styles, and I've big, right? It's like I think this when I was at the lowest I recall, like in college, I was right around 200. But I was still a 36 waist at that point.
Mm-hmm.
When a 36 waist meant something.
Yeah.
Right now, I wear anything from a 36 to a 40. Right?
Right.
It's like the same thing on like jackets or sweaters
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. It's so bizarre that I can be a large for like FootJoy.
Right.
Right,
But everybody,
and then-
it's different.
And then there's some, European designers where
Where it's
a
slim.
triple X doesn't even fit.
Right. Right.
So it's like I don't ignore sizes now. Like I buy stuff out. If it's a top, I bring a tape measure with me, and I just measure the armpits, measure the sleeve lengths, and because the size doesn't matter
No, so
anymore.
it does.
Same thing with Brooks Brothers.
Yeah,
They're so boxy,
yeah.
extremely boxy.
Well, I've got a rule on. So I probably wear a different style of sport coat than you do because my rule with like the length of a jacket for a man is kind of like my rule for my daughter with the length of shorts. No cheeks.
How's that go?
She's in
How
Italy,
does
right?
that go?
She's in Italy right now. So it's hard
You do the
to,
microphone checks?
Yeah.
and I think part of the problem or challenges with losing weight and stuff is that you never really, people get hung up on I'm an XL. I want to be this size. I want to be a 2 or I want to be a 4. If you're a woman, it's like if you're 5'3", a 4, you could look round.
Yeah.
But at
Yeah.
5'8", 5'9", a 4.
It's completely different.
So-
I think women think of the sizes more. I wanted to have you on the podcast though today because you can tell everyone what you do for a living, but you travel a lot.
Yeah.
And I get that a lot from clients. I travel, I can't do it. And you did it.
It's hard.
You travel the most out of
Out of,
anybody.
Yeah.
out of anybody. And, you know, and Jim, and I have to say, you consecutively lost.
Wait,
And you were amazing. You took the food with you. I mean,
Yeah.
you did your best moments. You had
It's-
moments, but you entertain for a living.
yeah,
Pretty much.
you know, it's hard. So I don't travel as much. You know, my previous job, I left because of it at the end. We sold our company to somebody, and then after I integrated, I was flying over 300,000 miles a year.
That's crazy.
I mean, Jim was
And-
coming in. I mean, if I remember correctly, you were coming in, maybe having a few days at home, getting
Yeah.
your way, and then you were off again.
Yeah, I would regularly do 2-week-long trips over to Asia Pacific, and do like Australia, Hong Kong, Beijing, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur,
how was your
Tokyo.
sleep?
You know, I actually got used to it, right? And I've started traveling again more now, not as much as I was, but I'm traveling more now. And I don't know if it's because I'm like 7 years older now, that it's not, it's a little bit more challenging. But I always like, my view is what, like, if I'm going east, wherever I go to, when I get there, it's usually in the morning, right? And you just have to stay up. You cannot allow yourself to take that afternoon nap
No, you have
that
to
everybody
stay up.
wants to do. You go to
Yeah.
Europe, it's like, I need that afternoon nap. Then you're dead because you wake up and your body's numb.
Yeah.
And it's just like, if you can make it till 10, 11 o'clock that first night, you'll, at least for me, I'd be fine.
You'll be good.
But it is hard. And in the last couple of weeks, I was traveling. I wasn't traveling that much. But I was at a couple different events and some client things, and it's, you know, what I try to do is I bring as much stuff with me as I can. And
Just
and
be
I
prepared.
yeah, and I found, you know, like there's a few of the different bars that I bring and stuff that's smaller that I can, and just, you know, find a way, stay away from certain things. Like generally, when I go to events, if there's a big lunch, I'll talk to people, but I won't go sit down at
Yeah.
that table. And when you think about it, when you're at a conference or event like that and they're serving, you know, 200, 500 people, whatever it is, it's like, do you really like rubber chicken?
It's really,
Because what
it's not
rubber
that
chicken
good.
leads you to is the mashed potatoes that are there,
Leads you-
right? And
Right.
and that's just,
Right. So you kept yourself busy.
yeah. Yeah.
Where was the best food?
that I've ever
Yeah.
eaten? Oh boy. Because I also cook a lot, which you know.
I know. No, Jim.
I've
Jim
got a
does it.
recipe that my son's been begging me to make now that I threatened to make, and I bought everything for it. And I'm like, well, I'm not there yet, so it's in the freezer. It involves bone marrow and pasta and
Nice.
stuff in it. So,
That's Jim.
I like
But,
bone marrow.
you know, to your question, the best food, different things. There was in Mexico City. There was this restaurant Naos, and it was a while back I was there. But they had this octopus ceviche that I still remember. Yeah, I've been there a couple times because I spent a bunch of time in Mexico when we were launching a fund years ago. A restaurant in New York City that was closed, that's now closed, Esca, that was this guy in Mario Batali. It was all seafood,
That's
like
your
Southern
ink.
Italian
That's
seafood.
your ink pasta.
It was uni, so sea urchin pasta that they had.
Yeah.
Right? I
Um,
Now
remember
I'm getting
that.
hungry.
I had this dessert at this restaurant, La Orange Citron in Paris, up by the Arch. The restaurant's closed now, but it was a cheesecake, but it had pears and it was Roquefort. It was blue cheese with like this balsamic reduction type thing, and just the combinations were
Incredible.
great food in Singapore. One of my favorite restaurants that's Asian fusion is this place called Chin Chin, which is in Melbourne, Australia, and it's just
Dynamite.
they're very creative, and I think it's not hard to make food that tastes good,
Right.
right? And it doesn't take a long time. You just, you know, if you take a little time to understand the flavor of different spices, and you know, do you like sweet, do you like hot, right? And just experiment.
And you did that too with the Ideal Protein Foods.
Yes.
You were good with that.
Yeah, so I do. So my and I haven't been making it as much for lunch lately as that the egg mixture thing, which I would do with like little peppers in it, or broccoli.
Right. Like a quiche. Kind
Yeah,
of make it a quiche.
and I would do, those noodle things. Sorry, I don't remember the name.
Kojaks.
The Kojak
yeah.
noodles,
Yeah.
right? That's great. Chicken and broccoli and a little tomato sauce, right? And
Perfect.
You're limited on tomato sauce, I know, and you told me I have to behave on recommending things. But just do a
I did, I
little,
told him that.
or do the same thing. Some chicken, to dice up
Yep.
a little bit of chicken in a saute pan with a few pieces of broccoli, a little bit of soy. Watch your salt. But a little
You
bit
can
of
have
soy
soy.
in those noodles, right?
I love the konjac and shrimp. With
Oh,
a
I
little,
haven't done that.
With a
Oh,
little
the
tomato
konjac and
sauce.
shrimp is phenomenal.
I haven't done that.
Yeah, make
So
it
if
like
enough
a
people watch
Alfredo.
this, though, I want to start a campaign to bring back the butter popcorn, even if it
Yeah.
We're
is
trying.
restricted.
I know. No, you know what? And you tell Ideal Protein. We tell them all the time. They're
Yeah.
working on it.
I'll chop up that part of the podcast and send it right to corporate.
Yeah, what's it, the pomegranate cranberry bars?
That's his
one
new
of-
That's
favorite.
my new favorite. I just discovered those too, like 2 weeks ago. I'm like,
Ah.
where have these
It's
been?
an underrated bar, and people don't want to try it, but once they try it, they like
It
it.
is, yeah, and it's got a lot of flavor to it, and it's a unique flavor because I find like a lot of the flavors tend to run towards, and some of the things tend to run towards a more spicy. Like you got the buffalo
Right.
pops, which
Yeah.
I really like.
Yeah, you like those.
I like those.
Now, so anyone listening who like the Southwest, because you like the Southwest, how do you
Yeah.
compare the Buffalo with the Southwest?
a lot hotter.
A lot. I think so too.
Yeah.
Somebody told me the other day, they said, no, Southwest was much hotter. I said, no. I think the Buffalo is much hotter than the Southwest.
Yeah. Well, everybody's got different tastes. Maybe they just had eaten something prior to that
Yeah.
Yeah.
changed their taste buds. And
Didn't we have a cookie at one point?
Oh, the cookie was the
That
best.
cookie was good.
wasn't there a chocolate cook? Was it
The
chocolate?
chocolate chip cookie.
Yeah.
That
it
was
was
excellent.
the best.
And the old mango pre-made from a
yes,
few years
the new
back.
one people
but
are crazy for.
They are or aren't?
They're not.
No.
No.
The old one had more of a texture. It was thicker, which I liked because it felt like something. Kind
Yeah.
of
That
going
that
down.
was
Mango's
popular.
my favorite.
Peach mango drink?
Yeah, peach
The
mango.
powdered one.
No, the pre-made.
No, we don't even carry they changed the formula. Nobody likes it here.
Really?
Yeah. So we stopped carrying it.
So
And I like the
corporate
Rice
has to watch
Krispies.
this.
The Rice Krispies are one of the biggest sellers.
Yeah, those are good. I miss the what's that long chocolate thing too?
That's another one that they want. See, that was only once a week. So, of course, sales were down across the board on
Yeah.
that because people only had it once a week.
Yeah.
So
It was
they
like a
got
nice
rid
Sunday
of it. But
snack,
that was
though.
that was a huge thing for people because they would take a little piece every single night and eat the chocolate. It was chocolate raspberry.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Canadian thing. You have a lot of chocolate and raspberry together, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And chocolate raspberry goes good.
Chocolate and raspberry go great. We're getting a vanilla. No, what is it called? A cranberry vanilla oatmeal.
Is that
Should
a
be here this-
drink?
That should be
Or
here
it's an
tomorrow.
oatmeal?
That's an oatmeal. It's a new flavor that just came out this morning, and I
I'm not
ordered it.
an oatmeal person.
I know.
Neither
know
am
you're
I.
not.
I like oatmeal. I'd rather
Yeah.
a shake in the morning. I'm not a big breakfast. Are you a big breakfast guy?
No. Well, if I wasn't on a diet, I
I can imagine.
I
what
love
you
an
just-
everything bagel with cream cheese,
Yeah.
lox, and
Yeah.
tomato and some red onion on it. I could eat it every day, but that's why I keep coming back to you.
No, but you
You know?
kept your weight off for a
Yeah,
very
I
long-
have.
Tell
So-
everybody how long you've kept it off.
So it's been 8 years now. So how this whole thing started, right? Because we met after I just moved back here from Chicago. So I'd moved down from Connecticut for work to New Jersey in early 2002. And then in 07 or 08, I moved for work again out to Chicago. And at that point, when I was in Chicago, I'd put on a lot of weight. That's where I was kind of up in the upper 280s. And I was sitting there and I'm like, I couldn't figure out what to do, right? And it was just, it's just bad habits that you get into. But I was, in my mind, it was like so crazy. I'm like, if I put on 10 more pounds, I can get lap band surgery.
No,
And my
you know
insurance
what?
company will pay for it. And
People
and
do think that way.
that's where I was at, and I just thought, I'm like, ugh. And then I was like, okay, had a chance to move back here after we sold the company because our parents' headquarters were in New York. So I'm like, okay, yeah, let's move back. So we came back here, and I was here. I think it was the first year I was here, and I was still struggling with all of this and continuing to put on weight. We went back to Chicago to visit some friends, and we went out to dinner. It was like two of my buddies were there, and both of them looked great. They'd lost like 30 pounds in the past year each. And I'm like, what the hell did you guys do? And they're like, oh, Ideal Protein. So I'm like, all right.
If they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah, and I was thought, well, I'm like, and these guys have less discipline than I do when it comes to like eating and drinking, and but their bodies don't store carbs the way mine does. I think, but I was like, okay. So I came back here and I started looking around. That's when I found you and I called you, said I want to come in, and I just started, and it is really all about habits, right? And different people have different views on habits, but it's if you can stick to it for 3 or 4 days, you go into ketosis or whatever. But if you can get through this for 5 days,
The rest is
I
easier.
find you start getting verification on a scale,
Right.
and you start getting verification in how your clothes fit. But for me, it was also, all right, this is working. I can see this, right? And I felt better. And I do things that you tell me I shouldn't do, which is every morning when I get up, I weigh myself. Now, for me, that helps me as a validation to keep going, even when I don't lose weight. Because there's times I'll go and I'll go 3 days in a row and I'll be at the same exact weight. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing? But I know sooner or later it'll kick if I stay. But for some people, that's a bad thing to do because they'll drive themselves nuts.
Crazy. Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, it helps me and it helps motivate. So I went from let's call it 290 down to 218. And I think my big mistake there was not going into maintenance. And that's kind of part of my personality is I like do a lot of project work. It's like, get a goal, project, deadline, finish it. So I got there and then I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? It's like, well, I'm going to have fun again.
Right.
I'm the same way.
So, and from there for the next like 6 years, I would bounce around plus or minus within 20 pounds of that, right? I was always like, I got back up into like mid 230s and that's kind of where I stuck.
You stayed there. Yeah.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah, and then, COVID hit and kind of the world changed, and I just started. I went from, the first spring of COVID, I went from being able to walk 18 holes carrying a bag in 3.5 hours to, in the spring till August, I'm in the doctor getting, gel shots in my knees because all of a sudden I got arthritis and I'm in a lot of pain. And I was like, where the hell did this come from? He's like, oh, it's a tipping point, right? It's been building for years. I broke my left kneecap when I was in college. I played rugby in college, and so I broke my left kneecap. So I think, and that's the knee that's worse. But he's like, yeah, it's just eroding. So I was like, yeah, it's the weight. It's a little bit of everything. It's just I'm 55. I'm getting old, and the wear and tear on my body, and the weight. You're right, the weight. And I started putting on weight, and then it was a year and a half ago. So that next fall, so this was what, 21, fall of 21. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I felt like I was having a heart attack, like somebody was hitting my chest with a hammer.
Yeah,
That's not a good feeling.
So. And I was lucky, my oldest boy was home from college, and he's an EMT. And so my wife got him, and he came in, and he's got his bag, and it's like having your own little personal savior there. And he called his buddies at the South Orange Rescue Squad. Or he actually made a call, but they came. And I had an AFib attack, and I spent 36 hours in the emergency room getting my heart to be normal again,
Wow.
beat normal. And it's and the reason I bring that up is because that led me to a path where now I had to take meds for my heart that kept it stabilized, a blood thinner, because like the number one cause of death from stroke, as my doctor tells me, who's a pretty good heart surgeon, is AFib. Then people not treating it and not taking care of it. But now me, being a good Italian boy, said, okay, I can still drink and still eat on this stuff.
Because I'm taking a pill.
So and even though I wasn't supposed to have alcohol on when I was on the medication, but and it was just bad behavior, and that went on. So then my high blood pressure got higher, and the medicine wasn't working. Then my cholesterol was up, and then my sugar was high, and my doctor told me I'm pre-diabetic, and that's kind of when my wife and my doctor had a little intervention this summer, and it's like, you know, you got to do it. At that point, I'd gone back up to 269 pounds.
And how quick
And
was that? How soon?
It took me about a year to do that. And that was this past summer. I was like, all right. So I quit drinking, which is a weird experience when you're traveling, especially the kind of stuff
At
I
the
do.
airport and stuff.
Yeah, well, and you go to a conference and they're having a reception, and it's like, okay, where is the Diet Coke line? Because I don't want to wait in line with everybody
Everybody
else
else.
that's getting a drink,
Drinks,
right?
exactly.
And and I went back on the diet, so I went from that. I was 269.6, and now I'm 227.1 today, and that's in the last 3.5 months, about
Right.
41
Yeah.
pounds.
But the first time
Um,
you came to see me after all of that, I knew you weren't ready.
Yeah.
You were in a funk.
Yeah, it's, I think,
It's not easy to do.
No, you
no,
have to
Look
be
at it.
ready. You have
Yeah.
to be ready. And he had a lot of stuff thrown at him.
Yeah,
it's like my kids are moving out, so my son's at college and he's gone. My daughter's went to college this past fall, and she's gone. You're working from home and doing different things, and it's like,
Life changes.
yeah, and I think I just didn't want to own it right at that point, and I think I got to a point where at this past summer when I really started focusing on this again, and I said, okay, pretty soon it's just going to be Kim and I, and in another year and a half, like the kids will all be in college or out of college. And it's like, she runs marathons, she does triathlons, and, I used to do a lot of mountain biking. I used to run a bit, not a lot, not crazy like her.
But your life
And you
would
pi-
just be starting like a different
Yeah.
chapter, and you don't want to be unhealthy
And
for
we're
it.
already starting that. So
Yeah.
I made this for me at this point, two things that I had to work through. One was I wasn't setting a goal to get back to a weight. I was deciding to live my life differently, and and I'm still working through that. But that's and I think anybody that goes into this has to think of it that way. It's like, you can say, oh, I want to get into size X, or I want to be X pounds. But I think if you want to be successful long term, you've really got to think about and realize this is a life change, right?
It's an
Because
absolute lifestyle change.
if you go back, if you did like I did and just say, okay, I'm gonna hit my goal and then I'm off to the races, you have zero chance of success. It's not even small. It's
You
zero.
gotta do it for the rest of your life.
Yes.
It's a lifestyle. It's not a vaccine
Yeah.
against weight gain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you can enjoy life if you do it correctly.
And especially too, like once you hit like a certain point, you can start working out again, start
Yeah.
moving the body, and
But
Well, that-
listen, I know people that will just get down to a certain weight and just so that they say, okay, I could do it, and then eat them their way back up.
Yeah.
And that's worse to yo-yo like that.
Yeah, and I'm spending more time, thinking like I've been doing some yoga and Pilates and some
Great.
stretch classes.
any
and stuff.
pickleball.
I haven't done pickleball. My wife wants me to go do that with her, but I'm worried about
The knee.
the knees, right? And she's like, well, you don't move that much. And I said, well, then it's not exercise, right?
If you do doubles, because I got
Yeah.
addicted to it back in August.
Yeah.
Me and my buddy started playing, and I became 100% addicted. So if you do doubles, you'll move, but it's not like it's
Yeah.
grueling on the knees. If you're doing singles, different ball game. But Very
Yeah.
addictive. And you burn a ton of calories. Like if I do a 1 versus 1 for 2 hours, I'm burning 2,500 calories easy.
Yeah. And I go over to the JCC over here. We belong. It's like so reasonably priced, and that facility is amazing. I don't know if I can say that on here, but
No, sure
you
you
can
can.
take it out. But and
No,
it's
sure
like,
you can.
The classes are never busy. The weight room is huge. They've got a nice pool. They've got a lot of different. I think the first time I did Pilates, we were doing these things, and I'm just like, came home, my butt hurt like
Glutes
hell,
are
and
hurting.
I'm like, I didn't even know I had a muscle,
Muscle
there.
there. It's amazing. That just
But-
went Chris.
I got it.
You know,
Yeah,
when
that's
so.
that's amazing. I love Pilates.
So like 3.5 months ago, I started that, and it's like the first thing I did is I went to the stretching class, right? Because I realized, spending 35 years working, sitting in a seat,
Things get
it gets tight.
Tight.
The back of your legs and everything get tight.
Who
And,
stretches you?
I go to this class, and we do a group thing. My wife usually goes to me, so we go out.
I got a great guy
you
for
have
you.
a great guy. If you go
Eric
to
from
him,
Stretch Plus in
Yeah.
Verona.
you'll never go anywhere else. Yeah,
He's
he's
incredible.
phenomenal. Phenomenal. Yeah.
He's right on Bloomfield Avenue, right by the
Yeah.
Verona Park. You go upstairs of Alpha Fit, and he
Yeah.
stretches you out for 30 minutes to an hour,
Yeah.
and you're moonwalking to your
Or you
car.
can feel the difference. But like the first stretch class, and it's a kind of a quasi stretch yoga class I went to, and my wife went. At that point I was 40 pounds heavier than I am now. Like so, I couldn't bend and move things, so my belly's getting in the way. And I walked out of there and I'm soaking wet in sweat. And my wife didn't even break a sweat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, she's like twisted into a pretzel.
Yeah. So now when I go, and I haven't been doing a class as much, and I'll explain that. But when I've been going lately, it's not. Now I don't even sweat, right? And I can do so much more, and that's just 4 months of my life, right? That got you to there. You just gotta keep going. But now that I am getting to where I want to end and start transition, so I'm working on getting some training classes to start lifting because the yoga and the Pilates don't really do it as much.
Yeah, you want to lift
I want
a
to do
little.
some more working
for
out
your
and have
bones.
like more of a formal pattern. And they say as you get older you should.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have
You
to
have
lift
to.
more.
Even just deadlifts. Go light on the deadlift, and for your
Yeah.
lower back, your bone structure, everything is so good for you.
Yeah, I want to get my 8-iron back to 160 yards.
Nice.
Right, that's my lifting goal.
That's your
When-
lifting
What's your
goal.
handicap?
I don't actually keep one.
You don't?
No, I don't even keep score. I shoot low mid 80s.
Okay.
So whatever that is, I've been playing
That's
a long time.
great, right?
Yeah.
But I stopped keeping a handicap and keeping score probably about 10 years ago.
Why is that?
So I was in Chicago and we had the men's championship in the fall at the Wilmette Golf Club up in the North Shore, and it's a 2-day event. So I was in a B flight. I think I was like a 16.5 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I shot my handicap. I was in second place. I was like one shot out, and I'm like, great, that's perfect. So the next day I go out, and I pretty much shot my handicap again. I thought, okay, I'm in it. So I go in, and some guy who says he's a 22 handicap
Oh boy.
cards a 78 gross. And I went up and Jamie was the pro. I said, Jamie,
That's messed up.
I said, Jamie, a 22 handicap can't shoot a 78.
No way.
They can't, right? And so that got me kind of turned off to playing in club tournaments and stuff like that and keeping it. And then I found I enjoy the game more. And listen, I could play 5 days a week,
Yeah.
right? If I could, right?
Me too.
But I find the game more knowing that I know how to get around a golf course, right?
Mhm.
Thinking about trying to hit shots as opposed to worrying about a score, right? Because if you're not worried about a score and you just hit your third shot into the woods, you're just picking up your ball and moving on with the rest of the group. You don't care.
Right.
And
No,
I
I can see
don't.
that.
The
In
other
other
way around, it's miserable. You ruin your whole entire day if you're focusing on the score and everything
Yeah,
like that.
and now it's like, I hit good drives, I hit bad drives. I hit great chips, I hit bad chips. I make putts, I don't make putts. But when I'm not worrying about a score and a handicap, right? If I'm 260 out, maybe I'll take my 3-wood.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Or
Yeah.
or if I'm 220, maybe I'll take my 3 iron and I'll say, okay, let me try to do this.
You're not laying up.
Yeah, and they're like, I'm like, I don't care, just play. And I found the game. Not only I found the game more enjoyable for me as I play it, but I find it more enjoyable now when I do that when I play with my wife and kids who don't play as much, because it's like I'm not focused on counting everybody's scores and keeping track of this. And the message that I give to them is like, just hit the ball.
Just hit it straight.
It's like my oldest boy. I remember when he started playing, and he was a hockey player, but he plays a little bit of golf. And he was trying to figure out, and he's like, well, I'm like, I'll give you $20 if you can hit your driver over that marker on the driving range. He's like, well, how do I get it there? How do I do that? I said, well, just figure out how hard you got to swing.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what
And
stuff I say.
And it's like, now when I play with my wife and kids, it's more of, don't worry about that, right? Just grab your ball. Like, you're not going to hit it out of that line or rough. Go put it right here.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, then I'm cheating. I'm like, you're not cheating. You don't know how to play golf,
Yeah.
right? You're just
Yeah.
hitting balls right now. So,
And I'm
You
sure-
can never master. Nobody never masters golf.
and they've made
And
it.
I'm sure it makes it more fun as a family
Yeah.
instead of everyone arguing at the end
It's
of
like
the
my
at
group of
the end.
golfers that's the opposite. Like, I'm the worst guy at a 12 handicap, and everyone's either a 1, 2, or 3, or 5, and it's all about the score.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'll keep score. I had the luck. I played the lower course at Baltusrol a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
A buddy of mine is a friend who's a member there, and he took us out. And my God, what a course!
I played the lower 2 years ago.
And
Is that right? Right on there?
it is.
The rough is rough.
It is. I call it crabgrass, and if there's some Baltusrol members that are listening to this, I apologize for that. But it's a very wide-bladed grass, and they're rough, and
Yep.
it's high, and it's like
Catches the ball.
No,
it
catches
catches
the
your
club.
club. You
Oh,
can't.
catches
But
the
but
club.
if
Then
you're
it's got to catch the ball too.
if you're
No.
sitting there and you're driving accurately, you're in the fairway. The greens are very hard to putt. They're huge, and there's a lot of undulation, and they're very fast.
I think the Montclair greens are a lot rougher than
I think
Baltustrol's.
they're trickier. I got a friend at Montclair, so I play there quite a bit.
I used to be a member there. It's like Mickey Mouse greens.
Yeah, well, I think, I don't want to offend any Montclair members that may listen, because all the men are very serious
gonna have
about
pictures all
they're,
over.
They're very serious about their greens there, right? But I would say the renovation they did at that course is stunning.
It's insane.
It is absolutely. They took
$8 million.
they when you used to when I used to play it with my friend there before they did the renovation, you get into the rough and there's so many trees, the grass isn't growing, the drainage was a problem. They had their greens, but there were other parts to it. Now, not only is it growing in better, right? But they've opened up a lot of sight lines and
trees,
views that
yeah.
are just stunning. I think it's one of the more beautiful courses in the area,
Yeah, it's
because you're on that hill and you
walking up the hill sucks, but
yeah
the course itself is awesome. And then they just put that new pool in with that new pool house.
Yeah.
That's exactly when I left. My dues went through the roof. I'm like, I'm out of here. Catering to families. I got no kids.
yeah. Well, we're so we're heading. I don't know if we're going to Charleston or Amelia Island now down in Florida.
There's a lot of great
Year
courses
and a
down
half.
there.
You're going to spend a year and a half there?
No, we're moving as soon as
You are gonna
as soon
move.
as Noel's out of my youngest boy is out of high school. He's a
He's out?
junior.
Out
right
of Jersey,
now. Out of Jersey.
I would be going down to
Gonna-
Florida.
I want to sit on.
Acres.
The beach.
Yeah, we'll be by the
I don't
water,
blame
and we've looked at some things.
I always
but
told
it's-
you, my next life I'm coming back as Jim Valente.
No,
I am. I told him that.
It's
I
a
tell him
rough
that all
life.
the time. It's really a rough life.
but
So Jim, also too, we got to talk about where you work.
where do I work for a company that it's a there's two parts. There's a consulting firm and a service side of the firm that focus exclusively on the real estate industry. So our consulting side of the business, which is not where I work, does a lot of M&A integration, business models, data models, things like that.
What kind of real estate?
All types. Single family homes has been a big business, especially with a lot of the developers that we've done a lot of work with. But office, industrial, retail. I've got clients. I work on I run our data management business, so we help big investors manage data on all their properties around the world.
So it's all software.
We have a platform that we've developed to help get data. So, if you're an institutional investor, you own a building, but you probably don't manage it, right? You got a third-party property manager or JV partner, and it's in their accounting system, right? So all the leases, rent rolls, financial data on the operations of the properties,
Cool.
and that has to get into our client system so they can do reporting and manage the property. So, and all those systems that the data's sitting in, they all have different data models and treat leases differently and all kinds of stuff differently. So, we've worked really hard to try to solve the problem of going from many different formats to one without, with the least amount of effort and stress for either our client who needs to get the data or their partners who need to provide it. And it's been 3.5 years since I left my previous job.
And you did the same thing at your previous job?
No, there I was building indexes and risk tools and stuff for global investors, and that led me to this, because when I left there, I had to take a year off of garden leave, which sucks, but to play golf every day for a year is a hard thing. It gets boring after a while.
Does it?
Yeah, you always say you want to come back as me, but it's
Yeah, you come back.
I got my problems too, right? Everybody has
Everyone
problems.
does.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. Everyone has problems, but it's
I
good
want to
be
come
Jim.
back as, I won't use last name, but it's Frank. We used to call him Crumb in college. The kid could eat anything and be skinny as a rail. Never put on a pound.
Is he still that way?
I haven't seen him in probably 8 years, but at that point, yeah, he was. But at that point, he was like 47 years old,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, still.
It's a nice.
I have more hair than he does
at
at this point, but
That's
it's
a
a
trade-off.
trade-off. But so I'd rather,
Come back as Crumb?
yeah.
We don't even know Crumb.
That's
but
great.
but anyways, so yeah, it's I've done a number of things. I've run research and strategy teams and built indexes for investors, helped them pick benchmarks, risk tools.
Any hospitality, casino, resorts and stuff, or mostly industrial, multi?
Well, we've done for investors that own the hotel space, but when you own the real estate, it's a bit different from managing the hotel, right? Because
The PropCo, yeah.
it's very similar to, if you think of like senior housing now, right? So there's a real estate investment in senior housing that has the rent for the rooms, right, and stuff. But then you've got medical services and all kinds of different components that drive revenue within that that are not associated with rooms. Like in the hotel sector, you're thinking about RevPAR, revenue per available room, or ADR, the average daily room rates and occupancies. But if you have a big meetings business, you do a lot of conferences and stuff there. So then that's almost like a whole separate business. And there's actually this was going back a while ago when I worked more on the investment management side. The whole strategy was going and buying unflagged hotels, independent hotels, and then bringing them over and flagging them, right? And flagging is whether it's Marriott
I was just going to
or
ask you if
Residence Inn. So you got something over here, you can buy it pretty cheap. You can flag it with one of the big brands, and I don't know if this is still even viable today because they're all owned by a few different.
Bonvoy.
Yeah.
Bonvoy's all over the place.
Bonvoy, yeah.
But you would go buy them, do a mild renovation, flag them, and your room rates go up and your occupancy goes up just because now you're in that.
So you would just
booking system.
hand it over to Marriott, do a JV.
Well, they would manage it for you
and
right?
use their name.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
Oh, that's interesting. I never
Yeah.
even knew you could do that. It's like
I think
flipping
it's- I thi-
hotels.
I think it's harder to do today, right? I haven't did, talking 12 years ago, 13 years
Yeah.
ago when people were, when we were
After the
doing this.
right around the crash. After that,
Hotels, it's been, talk about not being able to staff hotels. Any of the hotels we go to, they don't even have maid service every day now.
I can't even. I just had a couple of my team members that are one's in Chicago, two are down in Dallas, come up for a couple of days to do some work in New York City. $700 a night. You can't find anything.
no, it's crazy.
You can't find anything.
Crazy.
New York is now for our all our meetings. New York's off the list. It's just too expensive.
I think that's
And
why Ideal Protein doesn't do their super weekends in New York
That's-
at all, because it's too expensive.
You saw the boxing match with Jake Paul? They had to cancel it. And
No.
So they canceled it. This was back in I think in June or July, and Dana White from the UFC, right? He says, because they asked him a question at the press conference, like, why didn't that fight go on? And he's like, well, I think because it takes $500,000 just to turn the lights on at MSG, and the travel and the hotels
Yeah.
and stuff like that's just way too expensive.
Yeah, that whole area is interesting there, right? I was in the city the other day. I was walking by and I hadn't
Mm-hmm.
been in. So last week was week before last. I took the train into New York City, into Penn for the first time since before COVID. I've been in a bunch of times, but they're more for like mid-afternoon or evening things, and I would just drive in. It was fine. I didn't encounter anything.
That's good.
Any issues, but it was getting in a Penn and just seeing how much they're building around that whole area around Penn Station and Hudson Yards and everything going over
crazy.
there is
And they say that the cost of building is up, but
Everything's
everything's
up.
building.
Everything's
Everyone's
through the roof.
building.
But also,
yeah,
like
but that's all that's ending. All the construction's stopping. Right,
Yeah.
for real estate capital markets are closed. You used to be able to borrow money to do development at 3-4%. It's now 8-9%.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right, it's
that's scary.
that it's going to. I think first part of next year is going to be ugly for people.
You
It's
sound
gonna be,
like
yeah, very ugly. Also, too, the workforce too. I have a good friend. He's in the city. Has a pretty nice sized construction company, and he's turning down massive jobs because he just can't fill them. Nobody's working. So
And I think, we're kind of going all over the place here. I don't know if you want to go back to my diet experience, we can go there.
We're all over. No, it's fine,
We
Jim.
are.
But
Yeah.
it's inflation is people just say it's going to be bad for a while, right?
2-3 years of this, I think.
And I think you're going to be north of 5% for the next 18 to 24 months, and there are supply chain issues. But the biggest issue, which I think because we occasionally talk about this when I stop in, I think I was in last fall and I said this. I said, listen, this is all about wages, right? And when a Starbucks near here can't be open in the afternoon because they have to hire 2 more full shifts, but nobody will work for the wage they were working for before. And Starbucks has 401k, they have tuition assistance, right? It's not a bad company to work for.
Not at all.
So to fill those shifts, it took them a few months to hire, to train, but they had to push, as the manager told me, they had to raise the wages 20%. And right now, the lack of workers is really not a function of everybody has a job. There's still a lot of people not willing to work. And whether they're young people in their parents' basements, parents kick them out, that's my advice to you, or they're surviving some other way, that's our problem. And rates are going to keep going up. The Fed will continue to push rates until the labor market gets under control. And
But what are people
ugly.
doing for money? I don't understand.
Living off the government.
I don't know if that's true. I
Somebody
think
said
a
people
lot
are still
of
collecting. I don't know if how could
there
that be
there
possible?
are the savings rate went up dramatically during COVID for 2 years.
Because no one
Right.
was spending money on anything.
Yeah,
Just
no,
subscription services.
nobody was going
Right.
anywhere spending money on stuff. And it could be a lifestyle change. Maybe somebody was a younger couple or an older couple or whatever were saying, I'm going to work a few more years, and then they
Yeah.
decided, no, I'm not. I'm good where I'm at now, and with my retirement, I don't want to work again. Or
It's not worth going back, or
You know,
yeah, a lot of things.
somebody was, you know, a younger couple, maybe they've got a younger child, and they were both working before, and it was good, and they would put the kid in daycare, and then after a year and a half at home, it's like, I don't want to live that lifestyle anymore. I'll
Yeah.
change how I live.
I live. Right.
So yeah, there's still a lot of
Or
that.
we're going to stay in the apartment for a few more
Yeah.
years and not buy a house. And
But I mean, I think consumer spend those up now, right?
Yeah, but
Because I go to the
but
mall.
they're not. So consumer spending is interesting because it's an income number, right? So consumer spending is a dollar number,
Yeah.
right? It's not a how many bags of Cheetos. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How many bags of the
Ideal
Buffalo
protein.
Ideal Protein
Buffalo Pups.
Buffalo Puffs are you buying, right? I think spending is up because prices are up, but consumption of physical goods is down.
Because I
Or flat.
walk by Louis Vuitton and there's a line out the door. Or
There
Gucci,
is.
There's a line out the door. Rolex, a line out the door, which is odd. Very, very odd.
Yeah, well, if you're going to go buy that stuff, go to Europe right now because the dollar's so strong, you're going to get it pretty cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the airfare is outrageous.
It
How you getting
is.
there? Right?
I just booked a trip down to Florida from Newark to West Palm was for two people was like $1,400. So now we're taking it out of LaGuardia and going to Fort Lauderdale was $500, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So
No, that's crazy. But that's what. But Jim, that's why I did want to have you on the podcast today because you are a busy guy,
Yeah.
a
And-
wealth of knowledge.
wealth of knowledge, a busy man, high pressure job, and you were able to do it.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I think of you often when I have somebody say, "Oh, well, I have to be in Connecticut overnight, so I'm
Connecticut.
not sure I can stay on the
Jim's in
program." And I'm
Mumbai.
like, Jim's like in Singapore, and he's staying on the diet.
It says.
So I wanted you to tell your
Someone
story.
told me, you know, when I would say things like that, you know, and there's a good friend that we talk quite a bit about different things, and I'd be like, yeah, well, I can't do this, and what's my trigger to do this? And he's like, well, if you're worried about that, he goes, the trigger is just an excuse to do things you know you shouldn't. Right.
It's a great.
I like that.
That's great. I
And-
like that.
And, you know, I think, you know, people have different medical issues that cause them, you know, when I eat carbohydrates, which I love, as we
Right.
talked about, I love them, my body loves them more, and I will just put on weight like crazy, right? It just sticks to me no matter what. But when I eat proteins, it just falls off,
Yeah.
right? So it's about finding a balance, and I think as I said earlier on, you know, if you're going to get into this, you know, you've got to have a reason why you want to do this for you, right?
Gotta have a
And it's
why.
got to be about I want a different life, right? I want, and listen, it could be, hey, I want to fit into this dress, right? Or I
It
want to
could
be
be,
that.
but after
it
you
could
do
be.
that dress, after you try that dress on, that's
Yeah.
sometimes the problem. That
But
your
it's-
why changes and it doesn't necessarily translate.
Yeah, and I think, you know, my key to, you know, and again, I wasn't 100% successful because I put a bunch of weight back on, right? But is that even when I wasn't adhering to what I was supposed to be doing 100%,
Mhm.
right? I've always been close, but
No, yeah,
but-
you always were.
no, I haven't. It's-
You?
But
Jim.
it just, you know, never quit, right? I just knew if I kept coming in, and there'd be periods where I would disappear, but I knew if I came here to see you and I got weighed and I got food and I ate the way I was supposed to eat, I would lose weight,
Mhm.
right? And it was, and listen, I'm not perfect, right?
No.
I'll you know, but you can't go on a diet and have a glass of wine every single night and then wonder why you're not losing weight.
Not going to work.
It doesn't work. But, and I think, you know, as you told me, I remember the first time come in, you were talking to me about ketosis and, you know, it takes like 3 days, 4 days, whatever. But what I would say to people is, you know, give it 2 weeks.
2 weeks. 2
2
weeks on the
weeks.
program, your life will change.
2 weeks, you will notice a significant change in your weight on a relative basis. And I think it's got to be, because pounds for me are different than pounds for somebody who weighs 150 pounds, right? How much you're losing, right? So you got to put in context. But I think noticing that change, and like things I notice is when I sleep better. It was weird that I didn't sleep as much at times, but I was like,
More restful.
yes, and I had a lot more energy.
Oh, a lot more energy. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm the same way too. I
and-
sleep better. My dreams are better. Like
And-
everything's better.
And I think the other thing is, it's like when you're putting on weight and you're heavier, you kind of get used to this feeling of always being full,
Right.
right? Because you're snacking, you're doing things. At least for me, right? And I was
Or you're never feeling hungry.
and you get used to that. And I didn't like that feeling, but it's hard to break out of it because your bodies and your brain are sitting there going, "Oh yeah, that's normal. That's normal." But 2 weeks, and I notice I get out of that, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I feel really good now. I might if I'm hungry, I get the lemon wafer
Yeah.
ones, right? And like sometimes because sometimes it's like I do more exercise, I'm walking more, doing something, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm sitting there at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like,
I'm hungry.
I need something, right? And I like that one, I like the taste of those, but two, I can do one at a time.
Right.
So I'm not doing the whole thing.
Mhm.
I can just take it and, if you can just eat that half and then I wait, within a half hour.
And eat the other half, and you're good.
And it's just, and I think, listen, I get cravings all the time, right? And and I'm like, okay, wait a half hour. And I know people always say this stuff, right? But it really does work.
It does work. Give yourself, set a timer. When the timer goes off, you won't even realize why the timer
Or drink
was set.
water.
Drink water.
I drink a lot of
warm.
water.
Yeah.
Drink a lot of water. I probably drink too much coffee. Now,
But you do drink a lot of water.
yeah,
Yeah. But you were always successful, Jim, and
Yeah.
that's life. You gained it back, but you got back on the horse and you did it again. And
Yeah.
that's the message for people.
well, in this works, right? If you give it an opportunity,
It works.
this works,
Right.
right? And there's a lot of times, at night when I'm eating normal food for dinner, it's like I'm sitting there going, okay, I don't think I should be eating this much,
Mhm.
but if you're following what you're supposed to be doing, right? Whether it's
fine.
vegetables, I do a lot of salads.
We eat the same thing. I love salads. That night,
I'll-
a big
you know,
salad.
Get my protein, and whether it's chicken or steak or whatever, and some broccoli, and then you can load up on lettuce to your heart's content.
Right, and you're full.
And I get the Frank's hot sauce.
Yeah, the Red Hots.
That's
The
not
Frank's
the Red Hot. The other I forget the other one I use. But I'll use that as a kind of a quasi.
And that wakes up your taste buds
Yeah.
too. It does. It gives a lot of flavor.
I realize though too, my portion sizes go down when I stick to the diet for like a month and a half.
Because you're not hungry, your insulin levels are regulated. That's
Well,
the
and
reason.
I've been the past like 3 weeks now when I'm eating with my wife. It's just me, Kim, and my youngest Noel's home. At dinner, I'm like, I don't finish things.
Isn't that
And I've
amazing?
never done that before. And I think I think part of it's I'm thinking differently now about, okay, I'm changing the way I eat, but I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, I don't want the rest of this. And that's not been me the first 55 years of my life.
Yeah, it's because your
Right,
insulin
it's-
levels are
But
regulated.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it I have more energy. As I said, I've been doing some things at the gym. I went mountain biking for the first time.
How was it?
Great. I went with my wife, and it was funny because she was going up the hills fine because she's in better shape than I am. But then
down the hill.
on the technical down the hills where we're going off the rocks and everything, because I used to mountain bike a lot after I got out of college, out of grad school. We'd go in the winter, but this was back like in the 90s,
Mhm.
right, the mid 90s, and we used to put bolts through the tires so you could go in the winter.
Traction,
We'd make
yeah.
our own
Your
winterized
traction.
tires, traction
That's
tires,
awesome.
right? But that's that was like 93, 94, and so I've started doing that, and I've been following because when I was really young, back in the early 80s, I used to race BMX.
Oh,
A lot.
really?
My brother and I did. Oh yeah, and now it's like back. Not
everything
only-
comes back.
Not only is it back, but they've got like an over 40
Oh,
group.
jeez.
Uh-oh.
Here we go.
Uh-oh.
Look at his face.
So
His garage has 4 mountain bikes
Exactly.
being customized.
no, those things. I've got what is it, a specialized stump jumper that I've had for I want to say like 8 or 9 years, and it's good, right? It's got a front shock or a rock shock. It's a good bike, right? You know, I look at these bikes today. And my son actually last year had taken it down to school with him to Charleston because he was riding around back and forth to class, and I said, "You're not taking it back." And when I was down there, that's the other thing. I bought him a bike when I was just down there. But it wasn't what he wanted, which was like you look at these mountain bikes now, and they're like $15,000 for a bike.
It's
crazy.
ridiculous.
So I got him. I took him to this bike store down there, and I was like, "Listen, it's flat here."
Right. You don't need. What do you need?
So he's looking at a couple bikes. These guys were having a sale, and he got like they look, the Messenger bikes in New York. They're like one gear,
Yeah.
one brake.
That's it.
and
yeah.
and that's it. And it's a nice bike. It was like $250, and he was trying that and a mountain bike. And I said, go ride both of them. And he comes back and he goes, I actually like the messenger style bike.
Yeah.
Right. So, but yeah, I'm doing different things, and if I do the BMX thing, that'll be fun. I'll have to
That'll
let
be
you know
fun.
that.
Oh yeah. And then you're going to come back on the podcast and tell us about it. So is this as bad as you thought? This podcast? Easy,
No,
right?
Yeah, no, I told you I wanted to come out. I think it's, listen, I know we've talked about a lot of different things, but if my journey helps anybody, right, even one person, it's worth sharing it.
No,
Absolutely.
and I think your journey will. I do. And your message that, if you do gain it back, you can come back, right?
Yes.
I didn't
Don't
beat
quit.
you up. Don't quit. And come back. And you could, if you did it once, you can do it again.
Yeah, very few people are successful the first time at
Right.
anything,
Sometimes it takes
right?
more,
course.
no
more,
idea
more than one
goes from
time.
an idea
Exactly.
to a $1 billion company, right? Most of the people that
Amazon
are
was selling
successful,
books.
right?
Now they're everything.
So no, Jim, that's an important message to everybody. Sometimes
Yeah.
it takes more than one time. And change your
Yeah.
why.
And I read a lot of things. There's a lot of stuff out there like Atomic Habits, and I think I've told you this before.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of interesting books out there. Like understand, at least for me, I read a lot, right? It's a function of too much education and being a bit of an academic in my mind. But I find if you try to understand habits, how you make decisions, and I can give you a bunch of titles. that
Yeah,
people
can you
wanna-
give everybody some of the books?
Yeah,
I know you've.
because there's some that are like really long and some that are really short, but it's not that hard once you start thinking about, okay, how do I make decisions? What's driving me to do this,
Right.
right? And different techniques, and it's the same recipe doesn't work for everybody, right? You've got to find your own recipe, what works for you, right? I had to find what works for me.
Right.
Other people have different things that work for them. For me, it was my wife and my doctor yelling at me in a room.
Right. That's so funny.
But even then, I had to come back and say, yeah, I want to change my life. And listen, is it going to be perfect? Am I not going to make mistakes? Am I not going to go eat some night more than I should? And no, I can guarantee it's going to happen because I'm not.
Well, that's life.
perfect,
Yeah.
But if you just keep in mind what is my goal, right? And
Yeah.
my goal is to live my life differently for the next 40 years, so that I'm there for. As my kids get older, my grandkids, hopefully,
Exactly.
but not too soon. But
You'll be mountain
hopefully,
biking with
Hopefully.
them.
and my wife, right? I don't want to.
Yeah. Especially that your wife's so active.
Yeah, and spending 36 hours in an emergency room should scare you.
Yeah,
It didn't
absolutely.
initially.
It
but
didn't
Yeah,
initially,
should.
yeah.
Well, initially it did, but it wore off after
It does wear
a
off,
couple
right?
months.
No,
but
it's true. It's
but
true.
But you
it's-
feel better though after.
Oh,
when
yeah.
you go on the journey. You feel a lot
Tell
better.
everybody about some of the books, Jim.
Oh, I'd have to lose. So, Atomic Habits is a great book. Now I can't remember any names of them. I have to go look on my.
Can we
Hold on.
can we list them?
Absolutely.
Hold on a minute. You know what I'll do? I'll go to Amazon.
And look
and
at
I'll
your
look at
recent
all
purchases.
my recent purchases. God, my kids buy more on my Amazon account than I do.
I know it's not good for you to be looking at your past purchases.
But yeah, I will text you a bunch of
Text me
things
them and
on
then
it,
we'll list them in the
but-
bio.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, there's like, and again, take it. You know, I look at these as not, and they're not really self-help books kind of things because I don't read.
Would they
those.
just make you think?
Yeah, it's just trying to understand why you make. If you don't understand why you're doing something, right, and really think about that internally. Why do I keep doing this, right? You can't solve it. No self-help is, just it's an instruction manual, right? That everybody reads and says, oh, go do this, 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 and this. And then it's like, well, why?
Why? Right. They take it so
why,
literally.
why do I, and I tend to enjoy reading things where it helps me understand why I do certain things or why people do certain things, right? And, some great books if you think of like behavioral economics and stuff like that, decision theory, but there's some like really readable books for your average person about, biases that are in, right? And even on the web, there's like a lot of games you can play if if you just go Google, decision theory or behavioral stuff, where if you don't believe you have these biases, it'll show you do.
You do. Right.
That's
Right?
interesting.
And it's like, and there's so many things we've done where it's like, okay, I think one of the famous easy ones was, getting a couple real estate agents and getting them to set a price that you should sell your house at. And the whole notion of anchoring that we base a lot of decisions based on the context in which we enter that decision-making process. So if you go and tell a group of agents, yeah, the house down the street just sold for X, and another group, it just sold for Y, and in another group, you don't tell them anything, and then you have them all come in
Interesting.
and tell you what they think about the house. They're going to come back with very different prices.
Well, it's also past experiences too factor in, right?
Yeah. But
Yeah, but then they don't look at it at face value. They're looking at it from like a
yeah,
always a comp
we
kind of-
anchor. You in a lot of surveys, like a lot of the stuff on how you do surveys for people, right? And whether it's politics or what type of soda you like, right? A lot of survey questions can be crafted that anchor you to a thought process that will lead you to the answer that they want, right? So there's a lot of work that's done in that field of survey. It's a whole field. How do you create surveys, right, that are not biased, that get you, if you really want to know the truth, how do you do that?
How do you do that?
But anyways, I probably spend too much time thinking about, how you make decisions, what drives you to make decisions, why you do it. But I think,
I think it's helpful.
if you understand that, then
Yeah.
then at least you have a path forward,
Right.
right? If you're sitting there and every morning you wake up and say, why did I do that again last night?
And just get angry but you
And
got to
get
get
angry,
to the you have to
then
get to the
you're
root
not
of it.
you're not going to solve it. You've got to find something that says, okay, this is what I'm doing, and I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
Why am I doing it, and how do I stop doing it?
Well, you're in the business of risk, so it's all decision making.
Yeah, I'm risk off right now.
That's
risk
that's,
off.
that's,
Risk
that's how
off.
your brain works.
Risk on, risk off. Yeah, yeah, it is how it works. But yeah, this has been great.
No, I
Yeah.
thank you, Jim. Thank you for coming in.
Hopefully,
and doing this.
hopefully
I
you
know
can
you're gonna
edit
help
it through to
people.
get 5 or 10 minutes of important stuff that people might.
No,
not
this
listen
was
to.
all
people,
important.
No, this is all important. This is all important, and we're gonna make you. We'll have TikTok videos too that you can show your kids that you'll be on
Oh
TikTok.
boy,
Yep.
But thanks, Jim.
I don't do.
Episode
I do
43.
Instagram. That's about it.
All right. Well, we'll give you reels.
We'll do both. We'll do both.
We'll do both.
Awesome.
All
Thanks,
right.
Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, thanks.